Welcome to Client Spotlight today, where we talk about going from financial struggle, financial stress to intentional wealth building. And I have Tom and Victoria with me. And y'all, let's be honest, they're some of my favorite clients. So I just wanted to bring them in front of you and let them just tell you a little bit about their story. So Tom, Victoria from the great state of Ohio, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, thanks again, and it's been so great working with you too. Like you said, live in Ohio. We've got been married for 7 years. Got one 4-year-old on here, and then another boy on the way here in January. So growing family, expanding everything. I work for the federal government, and Victoria is a speech pathologist. So working family, young kids, a lot of craziness going on. You can hear our dog running around in the background right now. So there's a lot of craziness going on, and yet we just to kind of launch it into the first question that you gave us. Had for the last couple of years it had just been just kind of skirting by, like end of year, get the tax return, pay off the credit card, or do whatever, and there was no wealth building. There was no saving for emergency fund. Everything just like if the car needed repair, just threw on the credit card. And we finally like hit our breaking point where we kind of looked up and we had some credit card debt, and we did not have a pot to pull from to save ourselves from it. And that's when we realized that we needed some help. So we were already on the Dave Ramsey train before we got with you, Amber, and we'd read his book and had been, budgeting through, a budget app and trying to kind of blindly weave our way through it. But, when we filed our taxes, we got a free coaching session through Ramsey Solutions, and then just decided to keep it rolling from there. And it has just been so great.
I love it. Well, hey, thanks for sort of picking up that storyline there. That's fantastic. So you had been sort of going along with this same thought process as long as y'all been married, just sort of let's pay the bills, let's get by. Eventually something will ease up and things will start to go well. Tell me what were the biggest challenges that y'all were facing either in your marriage or your finances before we started working together?
I think actually I remember we were sitting at this table and we were doing a monthly budget, and we were honestly just arguing about it. It was very, we're here because of this and you're doing this. And I just remember we looked at each other and we were like, we are two very smart, well-educated adults, but like something is not working for us. And I think just realizing that finances in our marriage was just a touchy subject, realizing that there was a lot of emotional ties to money, especially for both of us coming from different financial backgrounds. We were raised different. And I think just having a hard time communicating that to each other, and trying to figure out just how we felt about money and how that drove our decisions and our habits, and really kind of just struggling on how to work with each other on that. And that's when we were kind of like, well, maybe we need kind of like a mediator to come in and help us navigate that as a married couple, because we had been married for a handful of years, but always felt like finances was a strain in our marriage.
I'm going to go off script here for just a second. How come that's not just a natural thing, right? How come that's not something, I mean, y'all are having a second baby, right? you read all the books and you do all the things to take care of this kid, but how come finances isn't something that's more like, wow, this is natural, I know how to do this, this is like instinctual?
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, I very much look at, or just naturally would look at people and just assume they didn't have money problems. It felt like just something we were going through. And I think I took that millennial mentality and was like, oh, when I get my 30s, like I'll be more adult. It just always felt like, oh, I will just grow up and I will just know more. and my age was increasing, but I did feel like I was knowing more. So I think for us, I mean, yeah, just even communicating that it wasn't easy and just learning that it's just something that people really don't talk about. And so there's a lot of shame and fear when it comes to finances. But I think we both were just like, oh, it's just going to get easier over time. And then we just realized that time wasn't what we needed.
And praise God, you recognize that now instead of.
Yes.
Yes.
So Tom, you and I actually talked the first time. What would you say was y'all's biggest fear to actually say, yes, let's do this. This is like not the typical way of doing finances. Let's actually talk to a coach and move forward with this thing.
Yeah, I think that it's the biggest hurdle when anyone is, being fully honest and open and vulnerable, especially to like a third party, is that, that there's some sort of judgment, that you're going to get there and the person's going to go, wow, you really screwed up your life, or wow, this is really bad. And that's kind of the first thing you run to, because it is kind of a source of like, especially if you have all the degrees or the job and you make X amount of money and behind the scenes it's all a mess, you kind of feel that you failed. And so it's when you crack open the books for someone else, that's putting yourself out there. And that's I think like probably the biggest milestone, not just unique to this particular situation, but across the board. It's why people, won't go and address their problems with a therapist, or, won't, go back to church, or won't do anything like that. It's because they're just afraid of the guilt and shame of, messing up or screwing something up. And that I think was the biggest hurdle to get through, for sure.
Absolutely.
Because we need to have everything all buttoned up, right?
Right.
Yes.
It's such a lie. No one does on anything.
Accurate.
So what specific results or improvements did you experience? And these can be tangible and intangible, money related or not money related.
I think for me, the biggest is the intangible of just better communication overall, and just making finances, like just talking about it more natural. Like I think in the beginning we, had great ambition and like, okay, we're going to sit down every month and have a finance talk. But then that would almost like build it up and bring more pressure, or then we'd get to that and we'd be arguing about something. And now, I mean, we just like last night just brought something up about finances on the couch, and it didn't feel like this huge weight like it used to. So I think for us, I mean, we even said outside of finances, our circumstances in the last few years haven't felt or looked great, but we feel like our marriage has really gotten stronger, and like what a praise that is. And we know that this is a big part of that. Tangible too, we did, I feel like we learned a lot about budgeting, and even realizing it wasn't even the budgeting that was hard, it was the habits. So we've really been able to like identify habits and talk about them, and not from a shame part of just like, hey, like I went and got another coffee this week, like, oh, next week I'll, do better. And just, I think just the way we talk about it is just a lot more still intentional, but more casual, and not this like doomsday kind of conversation.
And if you want to take that coffee trip, you can put that in your budget.
Yeah.
So what was your experience like with us working together? Were there any surprises?
Yeah, I think the biggest surprise was, building off of your answer, Vic, on the intangible side. Victoria kind of alluded to this previously. We have different backgrounds coming from like how our families raised us with money. Mine, it was like always on the table, talking about money, talking about budgeting. When I got my first job, sit down, talk about, taxes and, and all that stuff. And for you, it was the complete opposite. And I was expecting going into this like, okay, Amber, for like 6 months, we're gonna like get the spreadsheets out and we're really gonna dive in on like, and we're gonna find, the $1,000 that's missing every month, and then we're gonna solve it, and like it's gonna be very, technical and almost mechanical, like you're fixing a car.
Mm.
And really,
Oh,
that was
excited.
and that was really well, and that was really only like the first 2 months about like set your budget, figure things out, like kind of let it breathe and settle, and then you can kind of see it. And then the remainder was working on how we talked about money, how we managed money in a marriage, how we provided for our kids, and and working on those more kind of soft skills when it comes to finance. Then that was, I knew that we would have to reach that eventually, but I didn't expect, you know, so much work to be put in on that end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, having a different background, I didn't realize just how emotional finances were, or like whether talking about it or not talking about it. And there were several calls where I definitely was very emotional because I realized, why I felt the way I did and how it impacted me. And there would be nights after our calls where Tommy would be like, "Do you want to talk about it?" I'm like, "I need a day to just like recuperate," because it was like digging into these deep things. But I know, like I told Tommy, I was like, it feels like growing pains and it feels like putting in like work. And I think when we think of finances, we think of just the work of moving it around or making more money, and yes, that's part of it, but there is also the emotional work too behind it. And I just learned how that can lead to lasting change and help us get to our goals just as much, if not more, than the physical parts of income and things like that.
Mm-hmm. So you alluded a little bit to lasting change, what life looks like now, sitting on the couch, having that casual conversation. What would you say was the biggest impact, the biggest change between now and then?
That's hard to put in just one. I would just say for me, Tommy touched a little bit on that, just feeling a failure and feeling like I wasn't in control of money or my decisions or how it made me feel. So for me, I would say that's the biggest change, that I can have these conversations. I can maybe not hit my budget right this month, but it's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean I failed. It's just looking, I'll never forget, Amber, when you said looking at it more neutrally, like that money is something that I'm given, how I can steward it. It's not a right or wrong. It's not a you passed or you failed. It's, this gift that we have, and how do we steward it the best way we can. And especially with, raising kids and preparing for another baby, just really kind of holding that with open hands and trying to be more neutral about it, I think has really helped me personally, individually, I think as a wife and as a mom. And
yeah, I think for me, it goes back into that, you touched on the neutral part of it, looking at a neutral, that, it's so easy when you pick your head up out of the sand and you see, you've got some credit card debt that you need to snowball, or, you want to start snowballing your auto payment or whatever, just the alarm bells go off and you live in that fight or flight mode where every day you're like, oh, I got to wrestle with this. And, we're still snowballing debt, but it's less of an alarm bell going off. And just like every, day, we just know like, hey, we're working towards this goal. And, we did that X amount of money, we snowballed that into the payment this month, and we're chipping away at it. And that's success in and of itself. That it's not that, we didn't pay it all off this month or, whatever. It's just removing yourself from that anxiety by creating an actionable plan to move forward.
I love it. That's beautiful. So what would you say to someone who is in the throes of all this, who is still feeling guilt and shame and like, I should have all this together, what is wrong with me? And they're thinking about seeking out help. What would you say to them?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is, if you are attuned at all to how much debt Americans hold, you're not alone, so there is no, you're not the only person in the world that has debt or has messed something up financially, like, so remove that from your mind at all, that it's just you and that you're the oddity in this. And the second one is, when you feel that in your stomach when you make a mistake or do something that you're like, I need help with this, that's the time to act on it. It's not years down the road as you continue to try and bury a mountain that, continues to grow as far as like debt goes. Act on it when you feel that initial feeling of I need help, because that's the best time to act but the sooner you act, the better.
Absolutely. I love that. You feel that first twinge.
Yep.
That's we need to do it.
Yeah.
Yep. They always say the best time was yesterday, but the next best time is
Yes.
today, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, fantastic. Definitely not tomorrow. So do you have any last thing that you any last message that you want to put out there?
I would just say, especially if there's anyone that like kind of comes from the background I did or feels like I did, of just that shame piece, I think, just hiding the finances, hiding how you feel just takes over and the control is not yours anymore. And I just think through this experience, I've learned so much about just like taking that control back. And to be honest, like something that, we talked about was I went into it expecting my circumstances in my life to look completely different. And in ways it does, and in ways it doesn't, but I'm different. And I think, there's a lot of fads out there. There's a lot of quick fixes for finances. But if you put in the time and the work to look for lasting change, you're going to be way better off than just trying to fix a problem now or in the immediate future, and just thinking about what you want in the long term, what you want your life to look like in the future, I think is really helpful.
That's perfect. It's beautiful. Thank you so much for just being vulnerable, right? I mean, the whole thing behind this is if you lay it all out there, you know what you're working with, right? And y'all were so good about always just putting yourself out there and being open and honest. And Victoria, sometimes you said it's his turn.
I did, yes.
But I so appreciate y'all just really vocalizing everything that you were thinking or feeling and all of the thoughts that were in your mind, because really that is what caused you to really make the change and pivot and start going the direction that you wanted, because you were like, okay, we're doing this, let's go. So congratulations, you guys. I'm so excited for baby number 2 to come. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us today, and we appreciate your story.
Thanks, Amber.